Welcome to a very special episode. Every episode is special, but a special episode of MMA Mobsters here on a Wednesday afternoon from studio in Davenport, Iowa. I am joined, as always, by my UFC Hall of Famer, inaugural welterweight UFC champion, Pat Miletich. Pat, how you doing, brother? And would you introduce our special guest? Because I know that you have known him for a very long time.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I'm doing great. I'm up here in North Dakota up on the farm right now, and the forest fire smoke from Canada is blanketing this state. It's pretty incredible how smoky it is up here, and the fires are a long ways away, but the smoke's carrying in. But today, yeah, we've got a special guest, Eric Shelton, a guy who is a UFC veteran, has fought, had, I believe, 6 fights in the UFC, a guy who's never been finished. He's got plenty of knockouts on his record. Got some great submissions, and has a title fight coming up against a gentleman by the name of Tisha Guthrow in Unified MMA. So we're excited to have you, Eric, and we want to talk about this upcoming fight, brother.
Yeah, I'm excited, man. I've been waiting to get on here with you guys.
So tell us a little bit about your opponent. Obviously, from what I hear, he's talking a little bit of smack, is he?
Yes, that's what I mean, I've seen him talking a little bit of smack, but I think that just goes with his character. I know he's fought a former teammate of mine. I know you got to announce that fight when he fought Justin Wetzel. So just watching that fight and seeing kind of his style, I think I match up bad for him,
Yeah, and you've blossomed over the years. You've gained a lot of confidence. You've matured a great deal in terms of your striking technique, your defensive skills, footwork, head movement, your ground skills, all of that. So you've certainly balanced things out and put in the time. So it's Eric Shelton time, right?
Yes, sir. I'm trying to make my run, man. I'm excited for this, man. I feel like it's my time right now. I feel like my knowledge in the game is vast right now, so I feel like I'm at the best I've ever been.
Yeah, and I think your last fight that we called in Caged Aggression, I guess a really, really tough Dwight Joseph. That was
very tough kid,
very, 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 very tough guy. But overall, you were dominating that fight for the most part and picking him apart really well on the feet as well. Tell us a little bit about that fight, going back, rewinding through that.
Looking back, I got to watch it a few times. I feel I did well. I wish I would have let my hands go more, but I feel like southpaw's always been like a thing for me, just kind of figuring them out. It takes me a little longer than it does like an orthodox fighter. But yeah, I feel I did well in that fight. He tried to just lay on me and I stopped that. I guess the ref stood it up twice, but he wasn't doing enough action. When I rewatched it, he wasn't really doing much at all. So I was just kind of waiting on him to burn himself out, and it did that. So he wasn't throwing as much and his power lessened, his kicks weren't as powerful. So later in the rounds, I was able to just pick my shots, and I feel like I took over in the 3rd and 4th, 5th round.
Yeah, I just know for me, it was an honor to call that fight. That was my Miletich has been doing this forever. That was my first time doing anything like that, and that fight was so much fun, man. You're exactly right. The farther that 5-round championship fight went, Joseph slowed, and you seemed to get stronger and quicker.
Yeah.
The deeper the fight went. And obviously, you live in Indianapolis now, but you'll always be a Quad Cities hometown kid. And man, the later that fight got, the arena was on its feet, and the Quad Cities really does love you, man. And I had goosebumps that Saturday night. I have goosebumps talking about it now. That was so much fun. That was so much fun, man.
I appreciate that, man. I'm glad I was able to be a part of that, man, for you too. Quad Cities, man, I love the Quad Cities, dude. That's where I made my start, really. I feel like coming up in the Quad Cities, everybody jumped, Miletich, and you guys started that train out there in the QC. So it's an honor to be a part of that,
I have my own little Indianapolis story myself. I lived there for about 2 years. I lived in Broad Ripple and worked at a couple bars in the Castleton area. I think they're both closed now. It was Fox and the Hound and Champs Americana. But I lived in Indy there for about 2 years. So how long have you been there?
About 1.5 years now, going on 2. Starting to settle in a little bit. I like the gym out here, man. I'm starting to meet more people and network a little bit. So it's starting to feel a little more like home.
Good. You ever make it out to Broad Ripple?
I've been out there like twice. When family comes in town, we went out there. It gets a little wild, so
It does
not
get a
really
little
my scene
wild.
anymore.
Okay, that's good. Good for you. Good
Yeah.
for you. Yeah, it can get a little wild. Miletich, did you have any questions for Showtime?
No, I wanted to make sure that we established, let everybody know that he's fighting in Unified MMA coming up against T.J. Guthrie, and wishing him the best. And is that going to be televised? We want to know if there's a way that people can find that.
Yeah, it'll be on the UFC Fight Pass. So June 23rd, UFC Fight Pass. It's for the title. I guess it's the interim title, but definitely get a fight for the title if I get that. But I plan on getting that interim title for sure.
All right, good. And you want to join us for some news now?
Definitely.
All right,
let's get into some news here, and I'll get get takes from two UFC veterans today. This will be fun. Amanda Nunes, she put an absolute shellacking on Irene Aldana. Nunes was only about a -300 favorite. That's not. We've seen her favorite as much as -1,200, -1,000. So people were giving Irene some respect, maybe a little bit too much respect. I know that Miletich and I were fairly confident Nunes wins that fight, and boy, did she. She won literally just about every second of the fight. She won every round of the fight. And then she got both her belts, took the gloves off, put them in the octagon. That made for quite the picture. Got her beautiful little daughter and walked away. Walked out on top like Michael Jordan, walked out on top like Khabib. Not really much of an argument that she's the greatest women's fighter of all time. I'll go to you first, Sheldon. What are your thoughts on the female GOAT, the Lioness, not only looking extremely dominant Saturday, but deciding to retire, at least for now?
I think that was brilliant, man. I mean, she gets to go out on top. I think it was perfect set, man. It's a good storybook ending for sure. Because I mean, most champions we know can't get enough and always come back. Hopefully, she stays out on top, But to me, honestly, watching the fight, I was, Amanda tends to get tired once there's scrambles and down, up, down in past fights. So I was looking at that and I was like, since she opened up her new gym, because she opened up her own gym out there. And now I feel like all the attention being on her, and she's gotten better. Her cardio looked better. I think she looked the best she ever did, and she gets to leave looking the best she ever did.
Yeah. Give me a prediction, Sheldon. Do we see Nunes ever fight again? Because we do see this. We see these kind of semi-retirements, and they come back. Do we ever see her fight again, or is this it?
Man, I'd like to say this would be it. I'd like her to end it like that, but. I think fighters always have that extra itch, and it's hard to, hard to please that once we stop. So I think, I think she makes a return, honestly.
Yeah, I like it. Miletich, a woman who 100% will be joining you in the illustrious UFC Hall of Fame. What are your thoughts on the fight? What are your thoughts on the retirement? Do you think we ever see Amanda Nunes fight again?
Yeah, she looked great, but I would say this. The key is to just not retire at all. Never say that you're retired, because then when you come back, you're just coming back for another fight. That's all you got to do. So that's that. I mean, really, to be honest with you, I'm 57. I still haven't retired.
There you go.
No, but she's proven that she's historically the number one, female fighter in MMA history. I will say that Valentina, our Russian friend, a much undersized woman. I think if she was the size of Nunes, we may be talking differently about the GOAT in women's MMA. But having said that, yeah, good for Amanda, and happy trails.
Shevchenko won that second fight. I don't care what anyone says or thinks, especially those three judges or two judges that scored it for Nunes. So, yeah, but. Regardless of getting somewhat of a gift in the second Shevchenko fight, just amazing things that Nunes has done, an amazing resume. And I'll just ask you this question, Pat. What are your thoughts on Dana White announcing immediately after that they were going to shutter the 145-pound women's division? Look, kind of cheap. They literally kept this division open with like Amanda Nunes was basically the only fighter in that division, and then girls from 135 would move up to 145. Amanda would beat the shit out of them, and then they got to say that she was a champ. She's gone. 145-pound women's are gone too. Thoughts?
Well, I think Bellator and PFL and all the others should just use that as a springboard for 145-pound women's divisions.
Yeah.
Snatch up as many as you can.
Yeah, you got Kayla Harrison over there in the PFL. She's
She has some improving to do, but
yeah, she definitely has some improving. I think so too.
Remember,
she's a monster. I've had the privilege of training with her. She's a monster. So to improve from that, she's going to be a problem, I think. But she definitely has improving to do.
Yeah, getting up there a little bit in age. I think she's close to my age, mid-30s, but got a little bit of a late start, but has a ton of talent, certainly. Okay, so the Ultimate Fighter was last night, and a guy that I know both of you are familiar with, our boy Austin Hubbard, slapped the dog shit out of Aaron McKenzie. And the way that Ultimate Fighter works is, and I don't tell you this, Sheldon, you were on it. You fight a 3-round fight, but if a guy wins the first 2 rounds, they don't even do a third. There's no reason to do a third. So Hubbard looked good, man. Hubbard looked really, really good. Conor McGregor may be the worst MMA coach in the history of the world. He is now 0-3 when his fighter is losing, and so Hubbard had McKenzie on the ground, raining down ground and pound, and you can hear Chandler giving good advice. Move to half guard, secure the position, position over submission, like good, sane coaching. And McGregor's just yelling, "Get up! Get up! Get up!" Like it's not just that easy, Connor. You can't just stand up when you have Austin Hubbard on top of you. Like,
hit him with your shillelagh.
Oh man, they say some guys got the coaching skills, some guys just have the talent. I think he just thinks everybody should be, like him and just get that.
It's brutal. It's brutal. And then I was at a bar in Moline. They put it on the TV for me and Houston and a couple of our buddies. And so McKenzie was apparently hurt, had some kind of very serious, not serious enough to keep him from fighting, but a very serious contusion in his chest. And he was complaining about it. He's like, "Man, my chest really hurts. I'm going to do this fight. I came out here to the house. I'm not going to drop out." And Connor's like, "I'm going to heal you." He's like, "What?" I'm going to heal you. He puts his hand on Mackenzie's chest and just starts. He's like, feel it, healing. Like, what the fuck are we doing? Like, it's just, he's going to get someone hurt. So I just, a ton of respect. Connor went on the most legendary 3-4 years that the UFC has ever seen. I was a fanboy back when I was younger. I was a huge Connor fanboy. The guy is he's a bit of a mess. I don't know if we ever see Connor fight again. I thought
the women jumping off his yacht sure think he's a mess.
Oh my God, yeah, yeah. Sheldon, we were talking about when these coaches were announced, and we're talking about Michael Chandler, humble guy, obviously a dog in the cage, but seems to have a very good marriage. Has adopted a couple African-American kids that he loves more than anything. And then you have Connor, who's knocking out prostitutes and throwing them off his yacht. And could you have two polar opposite personalities and characters?
Totally different sides of the spectrum. That's hilarious.
Jeez.
I knew what they were doing when they did that.
Yes. Yeah. Smart guy. So, Pat, I know that you are a big fan of Chandler, not so much of Connor. This season of Ultimate Fighter is getting to the point of where it's just a circus. Obviously, was very happy to see our boy Hubbard, who was very kind to me at Cage Digression, and I know that you guys have both known for a long time. I was happy to see him look dominant, but Connor's just a circus, man, and it's getting to the point of kind of cringy, but yeah.
Well, good for Hubbard, number one.
Yeah.
We've known Austin, for a long time. Austin has always been just a rugged, tough grinder, blue-collar type guy, and he is another guy that's matured in a way that, and he's built up the calluses and the leather, man. And he's a grinding rough cat, period. Right, Eric?
Yeah, man. You got to respect his style, man. He's been in there years putting on the same clinic. So I think I would love to see him make a run again. Be happy to see that for sure.
Yeah. And, Joshua, when we talk about Conor, when we talk about, that's what I call Josh Howitt, Joshy. We talk about Conor, again, he stays in the news by going down to the Miami Heat to, advertise some sort of elixir or some bullshit product that he's selling.
Yeah.
And knocks out the Heat's mascot.
Yeah.
Floors the Heat's mascot with an overhand left and then drills him directly in the face. You could tell that was bone on bone. He went right through the mask, the foam padding, and drilled that poor bastard right in the face on the ground.
Yeah. So it's supposed to be a nice little celebrity appearance. And, Conor McGregor, UFC champ, former, is going to knock out the Heat mascot. Right? And you two are both professional fighters. You know how that works. You act like you hit him, but you really didn't, and the mascot falls down. Conor knocked the fuck out of him. That's what cocaine does to your body. That's what cocaine, lots and lots of cocaine and Irish whiskey do to your body. It's hard because, you guys are looking at a guy who was a massive Conor fanboy. We just lost Sheldon. We'll get him back. You and I can talk, Pat. You're looking at a guy who was a massive Conor fanboy. And I know that you definitely have your frustrations with him, Pat. Did you, obviously, it's different for you being a UFC Hall of Famer and all the great things that you've accomplished. I doubt you ever fanboyed over him. Did you get on the Conor train? Did you have more respect for him than you do now? What's kind of your journey with that guy been? You called his fight against Floyd. You've been there for a lot of it. Was that?
I separate fighting ability from, how you treat other people overall as human beings. Somebody's fighting ability has nothing to do with their personal life and how that's where, $100 million can take a hold on you, I guess, is what it comes down to, is that, you become the fighter instead of, Conor being a fighter also in life. We have to remember that just because we are fighters, that's not who we are.
Yeah.
That you still are a person. If someone's an attorney, you can't base your entire existence off of your employment. That's not who the human being is. So I think that a lot of people get carried away in terms of those types of situations and create that image in their own head that's their only existence. So I think that's kind of where Conor's at.
Yeah, that's a good point, Pat. And I think that's why we see some former fighters, once fighting is gone, start committing crimes and robbing houses and winding up in prison, dead or worse. That's some good advice. Yeah.
Well, and I think that's a little bit. I think the adrenaline of being in an intense occupation like mixed martial arts or professional sports, high impact martial sports, or where there's a lot on the line. Certainly veterans who are combat veterans who've been through, some very tense and intense stuff in their careers as soldiers, deal with the same thing. But I think more than anything else, it's just a matter of right now. Conor is worth a lot of money to a lot of people, and I think that makes him untouchable. And once that he's no longer valuable in that way to people with a lot of power, then his veil of protection is gone, and he may have some problems at that point.
Yeah. Sheldon, since we're talking about the Ultimate Fighter, we're talking to a Ultimate Fighter veteran here, and I'll just tell, you first came on my radar. I was living in Minneapolis, and I was a huge fan of the Ultimate Fighter then. I didn't miss an episode. I'm a little less excited about it now, but I'm watching because Conor always does something newsworthy, and they are introducing the fighters for that season, and then they go to your story, and it shows you say you're from Davenport, Iowa, and I immediately sit up because I grew up in the Quad Cities in Pleasant Valley territory, and they show you in the Moline Airport that we all know so well, that old plane that hangs from the rafters, and it made me miss home. And I think I stayed up in Minneapolis for a few more years after that, but did eventually make my way back to the Quad Cities about a year and a half ago. So I've been a fan of you ever since. You were great on the show. You leveraged that into a job in the UFC. Can you tell us about your Ultimate Fighter experience and maybe one crazy story that either did make it to the final cut or didn't? Because that had to be a fascinating time.
Yeah, I mean, Ultimate Fighter was it was pretty cool experience. Honestly, it was kind of like upset that I moved up to 35 so later because they just had 35 on this season and they were bringing fighters back. I would honestly do it again just for the clear mind space. I was able to just be clear headed and have so much.
We're getting some feedback on your, yeah.
Is it still there?
Yeah. Our producer said if you just said it, then we should be able to hear you.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. Our producer said that if you hold it in front of your face, we should be able to hear you better.
Okay.
Thanks, Sheldon.
No problem. Yeah, no, I was just saying, man, I think, like I said, I would do that again. I would do it again 100% just for the headspace, man. I was able to just be clear-minded and there, just focus on fighting. That was only one of the times in my life I was able to do that because with kids, life outside of that, I just didn't have all those distractions. So it was a pretty cool experience. But there was one story that didn't make it.
Here we go.
Thought for sure was
I'm excited for this.
was gonna make the cut, dude. I was sitting down at the fire with a couple of the guys, and we were hanging out. And a couple of the dudes in the house, two of them I had fought, so I kind of like felt a little bit of like an animosity. We had a couple drinks or whatever, and they did a prank on me, and they threw busted an egg over me and threw flour on me. And I had been drinking a little bit, so I got real pissed off and picked up my chair and threw it at him and chased him around the house a little bit. It was a little crazy, but I was so surprised I didn't make the cut.
I'm surprised too. They love their fights.
Yeah, dude. I was so surprised. I was like, oh man, they're gonna see me snap out because I was like, it was two guys I beat, and I felt like there was like a little bit of vengeance,
Yeah.
So
yeah,
it was just one of those things. But nothing too much bad happened in the house. We was pretty chill there because everybody was champions, so everybody had a little bit of respect, and so it was a little different.
What was it like being surrounded by cameras all the time? And would you say that obviously the fights were real, but would you say most of the kind of drama that you just talked about, most of that was real? It wasn't manufactured. It wasn't like, okay, let's do something crazy and get on camera. Would you say most of it was real or yeah, what would you say?
I mean, for like the first couple days, you see the cameras and you notice them, but after like a week or so, you forget they're even there.
That's
it kind of just becomes like your everyday, like just normal, cool with the camera guys, chatting it up with them too. So it just becomes like kind of normal. So it was, but everything like in my season, all the situations were real. None of them was built up. So it was there was a couple scenes where they're like when me and Tim Elliott were arguing a little bit, there was a scene that they put Hiro Masa in there making a weird face, and that never happened, but they kind of edited it in there. But
okay.
Stuff like that, I think. But other than that, everything was pretty well played.
That's really interesting. All right, can you talk about your relationship with the UFC Hall of Famer Pat Miletich? And I know that trained together. He's called a ton of your fights at Cage. Just talk about him and the impact that he's had on your life.
Oh man, a lot, dude. The whole reason I came to the Quad Cities was for Miletich gym. So pretty much helped start my career. His gym was my home forever. So I feel like just seeing the way those guys trained and just learning and building from them, like we were beasts down there. We stayed in that gym and we would work our butts off, even after, all the legends left, it kept going with Junior Hernandez. So it was just like the train kept moving. And I feel like that was a big part of why I'm so tough and durable and not able to get finished, because the hours I put in on those mats, with bigger guys and just learning from the Miletich way. So I feel like, man, without Pat, there's no Showtime, honestly.
That's awesome.
I had to be honest.
Yeah. Pat, anything to say to that?
Yeah, no, I mean, the young generation of guys, that Eric came in with, that was toward the end of my coaching. I was at a point where I had been coaching for over 20 years, competing, running numerous schools, law enforcement, military training company, doing broadcasting, all those things. So at that point, I had to push something off the plate. And coaching was something that I really loved, but I guess at that point I had accomplished, really the goals that I had set out to reach in terms of coaching. And, so those guys, at some point you have to go, okay, guys, carry the torch. That's it.
Yeah.
I'm good. Going to spend some time with my kids because they don't even know what dad looks like at this point. And so, that was why I did that, so that I could spend time with my kids. That was the most important thing at that time. And, yeah, so, and the young guys have done very well. Sean West and Eric and a lot of the other guys have carried that torch quite well.
Yeah, we got like Austin Hubbard, Justin Wetzel. We had a good little group there for a while.
Yeah.
Good little group of guys.
A lot of very tough guys.
Yeah, man. Everybody branched out and did their own thing, but we still, Rafian Stotts. I mean, look, the room was full of
Stotts. I didn't know Stotts was here.
Yeah, Jens brought
Josh Smith.
and Josh. Yep, brought those guys from the Ultimate Fighter show. So that was good. A great group of young guys, definitely.
Yeah. So Sheldon, we do the show in studio here every Wednesday, and then we'll do special appearances, usually bars or restaurants around town. And we did a live show last Friday at Josh Howitt's place in Bettendorf, and Dominic Martin was one of our special guests, and he told a story about you. I think that his first day in there, you sparred with him, I believe he said. I don't know if you remember that or not, but
yeah, I do. I do.
Yeah. All right, a couple more questions here, and then we'll get you back to your kids, back to your training, back to your life. And thank you again so much for coming on, brother. This has been fun.
I appreciate you guys having me, dude.
Tell me the secret behind that legendary Eric Sheldon chin. Have you ever been knocked out in training? I know you haven't been knocked out professionally. Do you ever get wobbled? What's going on, man? Is this made of granite or what?
When I tell you it's never happened, I've never been wobbled in the gym. I've never been dropped. Okay. Let me take that back. There was one time, you know who it was actually, kicked me and it hit the back of my head. It was Josh Smith catch me in the American Top Team. And it was the first time I ever felt my legs do a little spaghetti, but that was the only time that's ever happened. And it was, but I recovered really quick, but that was the only time, man. Other than that, in 14 years, I've never been put on my butt, which is pretty crazy. That's why I need to start trusting it more.
Well, yeah. What would you say there, Coach? Would you say, would you tell him to still keep those hands up, or if you can't get knocked out,
No, it comes down to he pays attention to footwork and defense and head movement and all that good stuff, and that's why he's not getting knocked out, and he sees everything coming at him. He's not getting hit with stuff he doesn't see coming, and that's the key to not getting rocked, not getting knocked out. And that's after all the years of competing, I never had the symptoms of a concussion, never nauseous or loss of memory or anything like that, and never lost consciousness. So he's one of the rare few that I know of who's been training as long as he has at the level that he has, that hasn't, certainly been knocked out or rocked severely numerous times. So, hats off to him because he's a rarity.
There you go. All right, Sheldon, I got one more question for you. We have a title fight coming up for the flyweights. Brandon Moreno. They are not doing Brandon Moreno, Davison Figueiredo, number 12. Figueiredo is, I don't know what he's doing. You talk about fake retirement. His retirement lasted about a week, but whatever. He's going to fight Pantoja, who has beaten him twice. And when you look at the resume of Eric Showtime Shelton, you took Pantoja to a split decision, and now Pantoja is fighting for the belt. Give me a breakdown of that fight. Who do you think wins? And man, that's how does that make you feel? I would imagine good and flattering that you took a guy who is fighting for the belt in the UFC to a split decision. So what are your thoughts on that whole thing?
I mean, it's just one of those things, dude. You don't like. I don't like to dwell on it, but I feel that fight was super. It was my debut in the UFC, actually, and his debut as well. We came off the Ultimate Fighter and fought each other because on both sides of the brackets we were both the finalists, or semifinalists. But I kind of knew it was going to happen. But the fight, to me, I felt I won. I mean, of course, maybe a little biased, but I've talked.
I thought you won too. I actually watched that fight last night. I thought that you won too. So
yeah, I know he had back control, but again, it's nothing you can dwell on. I think, and I honestly broke my hand in the first or the beginning of the second round in that fight, and I was still able to do that. So I think me and Pantoja fight again, and it goes a completely different way. But I also had the privilege of training with him for a couple years, so it's not something I would like to do. I'd like to fight like Brandon Moreno or something like that, but
yeah,
I see Pantoja beating Brandon Moreno. I think he beats him 9 times out of 10 just because I feel he has Brandon's number. The second fight they fought was not so long ago, and Brandon hasn't changed much, as far as style. And I think Pantoja stylistically just is a bad matchup for Brandon. So.
Yeah, I'm gonna throw it to Pat here in a second. Yeah, I think for me, brother, yeah, you absolutely gotta hold your head high on that. You accomplished some huge things in MMA in general, but in the UFC. I would love to see you back there soon, and I just know I was definitely a fan of you watching on TV, but it definitely hits different when I was inches away from the cage calling your fight. You are so fucking quick, man. You are so quick and lightning quick in there. Yeah.
Gotta get quicker, man. 25, I'm a little faster.
There you go.
And plenty of power, plenty of horsepower at that weight division, which is a beautiful thing. So before we let you go, Eric, again, tell us when your title fight is, what organization, who your opponent is, all that good stuff before we let you go, brother.
Okay, I'll be fighting June 23rd for Unified MMA. I'll be fighting Teshay Guthrow for the interim title, 135. It's going to be a good fight. You can watch it on UFC Fight Pass. I think I'm going to make a dominant performance and just go out there and make a statement. So that's the plan. Go out there and get a finish and make my way back to the top where I belong.
Beautiful. So everybody check that out. June 23rd on UFC Fight Pass, Unified MMA against TJ Guthrie. Good old Eric Shelton, veteran, badass, high-level pro, is going to do some work.
And high character guy, too. I linked up with Shelton on social media when I started doing the show with Pat, and he was had no idea who I was, other than that I worked with Miletich, and was immediately befriended me. And then I'm running around doing something at Caged Aggression, and I hear someone say, "What's up, my boy?" And I was like, "Who's that?" And it was Eric Shelton right there. I gave him a big hug, my first time meeting him, and then got to go see him become champ a few hours later and call his fight. You've always been very kind and good to me. I'm honored to call you friend, and we will be rooting for you. Go up to Canada and go add another fucking belt to your collection, man. That's put another head on a spike, and we will absolutely be cheering for you, man.
I appreciate it, brother. Likewise to you, my man.
All right, take care, Eric.
You too, brother.
Thank you so much. Guys. Eric, Showtime Shelton, ladies and gentlemen. All right, Pat, ready to talk about some fights?
Let's do this.
All right. It's a good kid, Eric Shelton. I really enjoyed that. All right, so moving right into it. Modestas Bukauskas is fighting Zach Pauga. Who you got here, Pat, and why?
A lot of stuff going on here with this matchup. I mean, how many fights did Zach have when he came into the UFC?
Not many. I know he made the finale of Ultimate Fighter, and Kamaru Usman's brother knocked him the fuck out pretty bad, but not a ton. Not a ton.
Yeah, so the last one he had, I believe, is over Jordan Wright, who Jordan's a tough kid, but, certainly not a top 10 superstar by any means. Bukauskas, I think Bukauskas definitely has the edge in this. he got Bukauskas got chewed up and spit out. Did 3 fights in the UFC.
Yeah.
Two of those, I believe, were KOs. Lost 1 decision, and then came back in and has done all right. He's got a couple, 2-3 fight win streak going on now, and so I mean I lean toward Bukauskas, but guys with this, Bukauskas has a lot. You think about it, with 14-5 record, has a shitload of experience compared to Zach. So
yeah,
I lean towards Bukauskas.
Yeah, and an interesting kind of math nugget here, Pat. Every fight that Jordan Wright has had has gone to finish, and usually it's been him getting finished. Zach Pauga was the only one who took him to a decision, and it was kind of, you talk about some guys can look better in losses than some fighters do in wins. I was not impressed by Zach Pauga in his Jordan Wright fight, a guy who should have easily finished. And you talked about Bukauskas. He improved in his little vacation from the UFC. He went back to the regionals, worked on some things. He looks like a better fighter. Bukauskas is going to be my pick as well.
Okay.
Moving on. Ronnie Lawrence is fighting Dan Argueta. Who you got here, Pat?
Argueta's actually a really tough guy. So to see him, at what is he, about a plus 155 right now?
Well, he opened up there, Pat, Lawrence is. He opened up at about minus 160. He's now minus 200. So he's gotten steamed out a little bit. Argueta's coming back at plus 155.
Right. So, I mean, the quality of opponents, both have had decent quality of opponents, and you've got to look at, Argueta. I've seen him fight. I've called, I believe, 1 or 2 of his fights. He's beaten some good guys. I mean, he beat Santos at 12-0 in the LFA. He's got a lot of potential. I don't see him being that much of an under. I just don't see Lawrence at a plus or a minus 200 favorite over Argueta. I mean, I'm not going to bet on this fight, but it's the odds are a little interesting to me.
Sure, fair enough. I like Lawrence. I like that little line jump. It's only Wednesday. They fight on Saturday night. We'll see what the line continues to do. But pretty much every sports book, Bet Rivers, he went from 150 to 195. FanDuel, he went from 162 to 200. BetMGM, he went from 150 to 190. That's a pretty decent signal to me. So that's a guy that I certainly like. And Lawrence is he's pretty much good everywhere. Probably prefers it on the ground, but can strike a little bit chinny. He's a guy that will get dropped and then get back up and still win the fight, but that's gonna come back to bite him at some point. So likes to play with fire a little bit, but a super talented guy. Zhalgas Zalmagulov, there's a name for you. Felipe Burns. Who you got here, Pat?
So are we doing the Teresa Bleda and Fernandez fight? Is that before or after them?
We can do that. We can do that now. Let me.
I was just looking at the order. My order might be messed up.
No, that's okay. Teresa Bleda is fighting Gabriela Fernandez. Bleda you can get around minus 295 on FanDuel. Fernandez will come back at plus 220. Who you got here, Pat?
One at 6-1, one at 8-2. Neither one massively, experienced. Gabriela Fernandez, who's the underdog, has never been finished. Bleda has been knocked out once. She has fought girls with a lot more experience than her at times in her career, where Fernandez has kind of fought comparable opponents record-wise. So I think the tougher opponents goes the way of Bleda. I lean a little bit in her way, but she went. What's her odds at now?
Bleda is a pretty good size favorite. We're looking at minus 250 on pretty much every sports book, and then on FanDuel, she's minus 295. Little pro tip to you guys at home: you should have accounts on every sports book, because this will happen where you'll be able to get a much better price. If you want to bet Bleda, you want to bet her at minus 250 instead of minus 295. That's just how math and money works. So. Pretty much every sports book she's minus 250, except she's juiced up to minus 295 on FanDuel for Bleda.
Yeah, so I lean a little bit towards Bleda, but I mean, it's Fernandez is is a tough girl. She really is.
Yeah, not a real strong lean on this fight now for me. We've seen the line movement stay pretty stale. Actually, we've seen Blade drop a little bit, and give a little shout out to my boy Steve Houston. I know that I think he said that he was liking the underdog here as he was diving in. So we've seen the Blade line drop from about -280 to -250. We've seen the Fernandez line go in the right direction, so we could see an upset here. And that's the thing about women's fights, Pat. I don't know, it's much more parity. We see big upsets in women's fights much more often than we do in men.
Yeah.
Seems like the talent level is.
Saw one last week with Maverick losing, right?
We did. Lost bad. Man,
Yeah.
she Canadians went 7-0 last week. Every Canadian won. All right, Zalgas.
They were fighting like the Canadians were fighting like they were pissed off.
Yeah. Why do you think
Right?
they'd be pissed off, Pat?
I'm not going to go there.
Justin's kicking me on the table. But Felipe Burns is fighting Zalgas Zumagulov. Zumagulov is about a -170 favorite. Burns comes back at +134. Who do you got here, Pat?
This is interesting odds as well. I mean, you've got a guy from Kazakhstan. You know they're tough no matter what. They're going to be tough no matter what. But he's got 3 losses in a row. He's 1-5 in the UFC. That's his last 6 fights, right? Not
Correct.
doing well in the UFC at all. He's had extremely tough quality of opponents. So that's, there's something to be said there. Felipe Burns at 13-6. I mean, they have comparable records. I think though that our Kazakhstani friend has definitely had a little bit tougher road. But I mean, I wouldn't be surprised to see a potential upset there as well, because Felipe is very good on the ground. He's got real good submissions, really pretty decent on the ground. Could cause some problems against Zalgas, but yeah, I'm very wishy-washy today on a lot of these fights. Dude.
That's okay. That's okay. Yeah, and you and I have talked about that before. Find a couple, find a handful that you believe in, and attack those.
That's about all there's going to be on this one today.
Yeah, there's it's usually going into a card. There will be at least a few fights that I'm not betting. And then I may look for a live betting angle. Was able to live bet Marc-Andre Barriault against Anders, and that worked out well. Anders came out blazing, immediately got dropped, but got back up. But you have to give Barriault the round because he dropped Anders really bad. And also, the Canadian judging had been a bit biased all night. I know in that Blake Builder fight, I wouldn't call it a robbery, but there was certainly an argument for him winning that fight. He certainly won the 3rd round, and 2 of the judges gave his opponent a 30-27. That was bad. So I knew that Barriault was going to have the judges with him, and I knew that Anders gassed a bit. And Barriault's nickname is literally Power Bar, doesn't gas.
Right.
So I got in at good odds, Pat. Barriault was plus money there at some point because Anders just wouldn't stop throwing. So I was able to get 1,000 down at Barriault at like plus 120 and then like minus 150. Really kind of saved my night live betting Marc-Andre Barriault there, just based on, some things that I knew about Barriault having a gas tank, Anders really not having a gas tank. Sure enough, Barriault got stronger as the fight went on, and yeah, it really kind of salvaged my night because Builder put me in a hole there early. So
yeah, and that 2 fighters from our parlay lost, right?
They did.
And so I'm one to we brag about when we're right, which is most of the time, but we got to take the losses with the team too, right?
Sure.
When mistakes are made.
Yeah,
and that's the way it goes.
It's the way it goes. We'll try to redeem ourselves in the parlay this week, although that's not a ton jumping out. But we do have one of my favorite things in the world, Pat Miletich. We have Dennis Bondar opened up at plus 110. He is now minus 25. You know what that means? Pow, 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 pow. We have an underdog flipped to a favorite. You know I'll be all over that. I like Bondar quite a bit here. I did do a little tape study on them last night. I think he's got Hernandez covered pretty much everywhere, and I think that he is flipped to favorite for good reason. Are you with me there, Miletich?
Yeah, I give him the striking advantage, definitely the ground advantage. He's, he is 0-1 in the UFC, but that was due to injury. Injured his arm in his UFC debut. So Bondar is definitely who I'm leaning towards in this fight.
Yeah, and did not lose that fight due to lack of talent or heart. His arm just kind of snapped. That was a weird fight. Kunho Khan is fighting Christian Quinones. Who do you got here?
Decent quality of opponents for Kong. Kyun-Ho Kong. Is that it?
So I believe it's kind of you may know more about this than I do, but I think like Americans pronounce Asian names backwards, or you're supposed to. So it's my understanding it's Kyun-Ho Khan is how you say his name.
Okay, and he's got a very respectable record in the UFC, 7-3, and he's is he the underdog still in the numbers?
Where did they go? Christian Quinones is minus 165. Kyun-Ho Khan is plus 140 as the underdog.
Okay. I'll definitely give the South Korean the advantage on the ground. I'm going with Quinones if it stays standing. The more it stays standing, the more Quinones is likely to win this fight. Let's put it that way.
Okay. I'll remember that, Pat, because this may be something that I live bet. So if Khan is able to find success with getting it to the ground early and often, maybe look for a bet there. If his takedowns are getting stuffed, you would expect Quinones to light his ass up on the feet.
100%.
Certainly be a live.
And I believe also at the same time, the South Korean has been protected to a certain extent. When I look at, he's got decent quality of opponents, but I think he's been protected for that South Korean market, that television, Asian television market.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So
absolutely. Yeah. That is definitely a real thing. All right. Jimmy Flick is fighting Alessandro Costa. Who do you got here, Pat?
I think where Jimmy Flick is strong, obviously, is ground. He's done some incredible, very acrobatic submissions, but Costa is undefeated on the ground, 6-0 in terms of submissions, and he's much stronger physically than Jimmy is. So I'm leaning pretty heavily towards Costa.
I like it. We saw Costa open up at minus 230 on Caesar Sportsbook. He is now minus 260. Not a massive movement, but shows that sharp professional bettors are getting behind Costa more than they are Jimmy Flick. Kind of concerned with Flick being a bit of a one-trick pony there, Pat. It seems like if he doesn't land a crazy submission, he's not going to do much. Fair?
Right. Yeah, 100%.
All right. The next fight of the evening is... Man, two really interesting fighters here, Pat. Two guys that at one point were big prospects and now have probably kind of settled in as never really going to be the champion people may have thought they were going to be. Maybe kind of a gatekeeper role, but still two really talented guys who haven't quite lived up to expectations. Raoni Barcelos is fighting Miles Johns. Who do you got here, Pat?
Miles Johns is a young guy who doesn't have a massive amount of fights. I've always liked the Johns brothers. I know them personally. I've called their fights. Great guys. Very good wrestling. Heavy hands.
Who's the other brother?
Now you got me. Now you got me thinking.
All right.
I'll come up with it in a second.
I know what you're talking about, though.
But Miles has had very good quality of opponents. Not quite as tough as I think as Barcelos. Barcelos has definitely had a little bit of a tougher road. I think Barcelos gets the nod in this one simply because he does, for a Brazilian, have very good wrestling. He's got good wrestling takedown defense. And I think Miles Johns needs those takedowns periodically to spread out defense. That's something that he's been pretty good at. I think he might have some problems. Taking Barcelos down. He might have to do a lot of extra work to accomplish that. And I think Barcelos is very, very heavy-handed. in terms of, I mean, both guys have power, but Barcelo seems to be a guy that, just has the edge in knockout power. So I mean, I lean a little bit towards Barcelos in this fight.
Pat, he has amazing wrestling and amazing jiu-jitsu and amazing power and amazing speed. Why aren't we talking about this guy fighting for a belt? I think that maybe it's mental, and a guy.
Well, that weight division's full of straight fucking killers, bro.
Yeah.
I mean, he's got a very respectable 6-3 record in the UFC. In that weight division, I mean, that's a pretty damn good record.
Yeah.
And Miles Johns in the UFC is 4-2. Both guys very tough.
Yeah.
It's a tough fight for both of them. And Johns, you got to remember too, is, I mean, he's been finished a couple times as well. Once on the ground, once standing. Both guys similar in terms of that, but I think I just lean a little bit towards Barcelos though, because of his well-roundedness.
You hit on a good point there, brother. 135 and 155 men's probably the most two loaded divisions in the UFC. And so, I don't know. I'm a fan of Heone. He's got all the talent in the world. He's, I believe, 34 now, so not getting any younger. But maybe a guy like a Robbie Lawler who is able to put it all together and go out and get a title, because he's got the fucking tools, man. He's got.
Well, just remember that the man strength years, from my observance over all the years, from about 28 to 36 years old, are where guys are going to be the most powerful, combined with the speed, the knowledge, all that sort of stuff. So Barcelos, he's got a couple good years at least left in him, in my book.
I love it. The man strength years. All right. Next up, we have what should be a striking affair. We have Muslim Saliakov fighting Nicholas Dalby. You expect this fight to stay on the feet, Pat, and who do you expect to win?
I think Muslim has the edge. I think Muslim has the power. Not that Darby does not. He's got some KOs to his credit. He's never been KO'd. Muslim has been finished once with strikes, but he's also got 12 KO victories. So at 6-2 in the UFC, and Darby's 5-3. That one of the decisions, interesting, that Darby has taken was a loss. I think it was 2 or 3 fights ago against Tim Means, and Tim Means is a guy that I've always liked. Very dangerous striker. The
Dirty Bird. The
Dirty Bird. But I'm definitely leaning towards Muslim in this one. Sokolov, I think, has the edge in this fight, and I'm going to go with him. He's got very, very good quality of opponents as well.
Yeah, I think kind of stale movement there for Saliakov. Opened at -190, has pretty much stayed there. I'm just not that impressed with Dalby, man. Obviously, I'm incredible respect to anyone who gets in that cage. Definitely whoever gets the UFC level, but Dalby he's got that karate stance, and I think he's just kind of below average everywhere. And Saliakov, when you talk about spinning shit and that Muay Thai, he's one of the best in the world. And I think kind of his issue is he'd occasionally run into a wrestler or a jiu-jitsu guy, and he wouldn't be able to use his all-world striking. Dalby's going to stand with him. Dalby's going to hang with him. And that's
the thing. If I'm Dalby's coach, I'm telling him, let's look for takedowns, and because Dalby's never been finished on the ground. Dalby's 4-0 in the submission department.
Yeah.
And when you look at Saliakov, he's 3-2 on the ground.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking, let's look for takedowns. Let's get the takedowns. Throw a curveball at this guy, and let's get a finish on the ground, because I don't think Darby gets this done standing up.
Yeah, I don't expect him to wrestle, but certainly, I'll talk about live betting. Certainly, if we see Dalby doing takedowns, that could possibly be a live betting opportunity. Nicholas Mota, he gets Manuel Torres. Who you got here, Pat?
Torres, a guy, he's got a great record. He's 1-0 in the UFC, 1-0 Contender Series. But outside of that, he's been fighting, Tijuana cab drivers, bro.
Yeah.
I mean, there's not very good quality of opponents that I'm observing, at least from my viewpoint.
Yeah.
He's been submitted a couple times. It's not that Mota's, a friggin' Gracie by any means on the ground. So, obviously this is going to be a striking affair. This will be probably a fan favorite type fight.
Yeah.
But I lean towards Torres. That Mexican boxing and kickboxing, he's very tough in that department. May get the best of Mota in this one.
Yeah. I looked at that record for Manny Torres too. He's fought everyone who works at the Taco Bell. He is really not definitely a bit of a padded.
Now, why would you say Taco Bell and not Kentucky Fried Chicken? Why would you?
Kentucky Fried Chicken. Well, I don't want to upset people in Kentucky, Pat. We have a big audience in Kentucky, I think a little bit of movement for Torres. Open at -165. He's up to -200. Yeah, I think Mota. It's just kind of, again, if you get in the UFC, it's not like you suck, but it just seems to kind of, for a UFC fighter, it just doesn't blow me away. This potential fight of the night here, Pat, Christian Leroy Duncan, Armin Petrosyan, two European prospects who like to bang. What do you think happens here, Pat?
I'm really leaning towards Duncan in this one.
Okay.
I really am. I think Duncan has proven himself to be a pretty damn hot prospect. Very talented guy. He really is a dangerous striker.
Yeah, and this is interesting. You might be onto something there with Duncan. I'm looking, and I'll just tell you now, because this is no big secret. I know that I'm a big fan of Best Fight Odds. They have a new UFC line movement website, which incorporates a few more books. And okay. I know that you were texting me today because Best Fight Odds will occasionally put a fight on the wrong card. This site does not. So it's fightodds.io. It's free. So that is something that I discovered. I was getting Best Fight Odds is fine, but I was getting a little annoyed with them the other week. So I did some digging, and this has been good. So that'll incorporate a few more books like Pinnacle and others. So just told Pat that, and you at home that. So so I'm looking here on fightodds.io, and they have a sports book that Best Fight Odds doesn't have, and that is Bet Online. And they put lines up very early, and they had Leroy Duncan as a substantial underdog, like plus 145. Now they have minus 150. Always good when you're looking at line movement to look at multiple books and see what they're doing, because sometimes they'll just put the wrong number up, and so look around. But that's
Petrosyan was 4-1 when he got a call up to the UFC off a loss.
Did he really? I thought that this did that for girls. I didn't realize they brought. I didn't.
No, look at.
I believe you.
Record there.
I believe you.
Look at Petrosyan's record.
Yeah, you're right.
I'm pretty sure he was coming off a loss when he got the call up.
Jeez Louise.
I mean, how deep into the waters do you got to go trolling for carp on this one? I'm not calling him a shitty fighter. I'm just saying, at creme de la creme, quality opponents or quality talent is what you're supposed to be looking for, right? I'm going to be honest. I'm not a company man, right?
Yeah.
I'm not a company man. I'm going to be honest about things.
4-1 when he got his Contender Series fight, Pat.
Right.
Wins his Contender Series fight convincingly, and then Dana gave him a job.
How did they sell that, though? How did they sell that? Okay, he's coming off a loss. Let's give him a shot.
You know how they sold it, Pat? Because I remember this fight. Kolyan Kolev was the next big thing in MMA, and Petrosyan was just there to keep him warm, make him look good. Petrosyan pulled off his own highlight reel knockout, so much so that Dana gave him a job. So Petrosyan has somewhat backed into the UFC here. They never really he surprised some people because he was just on that Contender Series fight to make Kolev look good. And now I don't know what Kolev's doing now. He's not in the UFC, but so that is some interesting stuff there. And you look at his fight with Gregory Rodriguez. He didn't win that fight. Two judges got that dead fucking wrong. So he should have one less win and one more loss on his record. little things like that are important to keep in mind, because
Sure.
what the sports books will do is a lot of the time they'll factor these guys' records into how they make the lines.
Yeah.
And when a guy has a win that should be a loss, that's important to keep in
So you're
mind.
saying Duncan's a good bet on the underdog side of
I'm
things.
certainly well, Duncan is the favorite. Duncan is a small favorite.
Yeah.
He is
Okay.
minus
I thought
one.
you were saying Duncan was plus there for a second.
Minus 150, Petrosian's plus 120. So yeah, I would definitely put I would put a Duncan would probably be Duncan would be a small bet for me right now. We'll have to see what the line movement does.
Okay.
We have a whopping fucking massive giant favorite. Arman Sarukian is minus 1,200 fighting Joaquim Silva. Are we riding Joaquim Silva plus 700 all the way to the bank, Pat? Or
I just want to know what Silva did to Dana White to get this fucking matchup. Right?
Oh man,
he's getting sent to his. And is the Sabatini and Almeida fight still on this card?
It is. I will do that next. Thank you for reminding me.
Okay, I was just checking.
So yeah, what do you think, Pat? Do we shrink the odds by getting Sarukian by finish? Sarukian not a huge finisher, but at minus 1,200, you're expected to finish. What do you think about this massive favorite?
Sarukian's got 7 KOs and 5 subs. So, I mean, yeah, he's gone to decision, 9 times. He's 7-2 in the decision department. So that's always a possibility. Silva's a guy that's got, he's got some finishes as well. And so I think that Silva's the kind of guy, a Brazilian tough competitor who's going to go out and potentially try and slug with Arman Sarukian and get himself potentially KO'd.
Yeah. And Arman does go to decision a lot, but it's not for lack of trying. He pounded out, I got to look this up, the kid from Spain, Joel Alvarez. Super talented guy. Joel Alvarez just knocked out Tiago Moises recently. Sarukian put him on his back. Was not content holding him down, Pat. Was hunting a finish, hunting chokes, and eventually hunting the chokes led to grounded pounds. Beat him up bad. Hurt him bad. Got him out in the second round. Christian Giagos, who's a perfectly good UFC fighter. Sarukian fucked him up pretty bad. So, yeah, I think that, and like you said, if Silva comes out aggressively like we expect him to, there will be more opportunities for Sarukian to find a finish there. So,
yeah, I think it'll be a slugfest.
Yeah, Sarukian by finish is a bet that I am certainly looking at. Pat Sabatini, Lucas Almeida. We will break that down, and then we just have the main event. Who you got in Sabatini, Almeida there, Miletich?
The thing that's interesting about Almeida is he had straight garbage opponents until he got to the UFC for the most part. If we look at his quality of opponents, that's, he's 9-0 in the KO department, 5-0 subs, been to decision 1 time. So all finishes for the most part, besides that 1 loss by decision. The kid mentally, I'm sure, is used to finishing people. He's used to being a winner, coming in against Sabatini, who's a huge jump up in quality for him. I don't know what's Sabatini at in terms of the betting now.
Sabatini is roughly minus 190 favorites. Almeida comes back at plus 165.
Yeah. And, certainly Sabatini's gone up against much, much tougher quality of opponents and still has a pretty damn good record. You've got to lean pretty heavily towards Sabatini in this one. But at the same time, Sabatini is not done real well standing up. I think he'd be wise, obviously, to use his wrestling and his ground skills in this fight.
I agree. I think that Sabatini would be the side here. Extremely close fight, literally a coin flip, essentially. Marvin Vettori, Jared Cannonier. Like I said, essentially a coin flip. Marvin Vettori is minus 15. Cannonier is minus 1 105. The Vettori movement is interesting. Vettori opened up at minus 150. He has been bet down to essentially a coin flip. There's a very good chance we see Cannonier flip from underdog status to favorite. He's essentially gone from underdog status to now basically the same odds. Do you agree with the line movement here, Pat? Are you back in Cannonier? Because Marvin Vettori has not looked like himself recently and really got a gift in a fight that he really should not have won, and the judges gave it to him. Before that, Robert Whittaker fucked him up. A guy who wrestles a lot, does a lot of volume, and just for whatever reason hasn't looked like himself. What do you think, Pat?
I've always liked Cannonier. Always liked Cannonier. I think Cannonier just doesn't maybe fully, and I'm hoping that he gets to the point now where he's got full confidence in his skill set. When he fought Izzy, I mean, it was kind of a standoff. It wasn't a super, super exciting fight, but Izzy, for whatever reason, was, respected Cannonier enough that he didn't want to get into those brawls with Cannonier. I think that both guys have fought obviously a who's who of the killer's row, and it is quite a toss up. But I lean a little bit towards Cannonier.
Yeah.
Vettori's proven that he's never been finished. Super rugged guy, can take a hell of a lot of abuse. But I lean a little bit towards Cannonier because I think he can shut down Vettori's takedowns quite a bit.
I like Cannonier here. I will be very interested to see if he does officially flip to favorite. And for those of you wondering, it was the Roman Dolidze fight that happened in March where Dolidze got robbed. Both Pat and I and most of the media thought that Vettori should have lost that one. So that plays a factor in the odds. I think if the judges had given Vettori the loss like they should have in his last fight, we would see Cannonier be the favorite here. For now, we see him open as an underdog. I like Cannonier. I'm going to bet Cannonier. I'm not sure how much I'm going to bet on Cannonier, but I like this spot for him. I think, and I like Vettori, man. Vettori's made me a good amount of money in the past. Beat Paulo Costa, beat Kevin Holland. I had big bets on him for both those fights. Vettori just doesn't really seem there anymore, and I think Cannonier has a lot of ways to beat him here. Fair enough, Pat?
I think that's fair. I think that's, yeah. I lean towards Cannonier. Yeah.
Okay. For those of you who are going to be watching this, and we had great views. I think we're sitting around 300 views for the last show, so certainly want to keep building on that, but appreciate that. Not only subscribe if you haven't subscribed, but hit the like button. I just recently learned how important it is to hit that like button, because the more people that hit the like button, the more likely it is, no pun intended, for that video to pop up in other people's feeds. We get more people watching, we build to the family. So please, everyone watching this, all 300 or so of you who are going to watch this, please hit the like button. Right now we're getting like 10 or 12 likes. We appreciate that. Everyone who watches, please hit the like button. That'll help us build MMA Mobsters. That'll help Pat and I hit a bigger audience and continue to bring the really cool stuff that we're doing to more people. Thank you, Eric Showtime Shelton, champ. You are a gem. You are a star. We really enjoyed having you on. Miletich, as always, brother, I will look forward to having you sit right here beside me next week in studio, and we'll be doing that. You drive safe. Anything else you want to say before we sign off?
Nope, just good talking to you, brother. And yeah, let's. I mean, the wishy-washiness today. I've not been this wishy-washy on a card ever. Yeah, it's very interesting matchups. Well,
you're nothing if not always honest, and I would much rather you just be honest than say, oh, this is a lock when you don't. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with saying that that you're a little bit torn. Thank you to Justin, the best producer that we can ask for. We are signing off. We will see you next week. MMA Mobsters, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, join the Discord, follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. YouTube. We fucking love you guys. We'll see you next week. MMA Mobsters.